Hi guys, and welcome to this episode of the Happy Knitting Podcast. My name is Julia. I'm coming to you from the UK, and today I'm coming to you on a Thursday. It's the 22nd of February 2024, and I am so glad you're joining me today to talk about some knitting and some crochet. This is primarily a knitting podcast, but I've been having a love affair with crochet. I've been cheating on knitting a little bit, so I will show that as well. I'm recording on a Thursday. First up, I should say that I'm so grateful for all of your comments on last week's episode. I think just very sort of briefly shared my own feelings and reflections on podcasting and what I'm doing, and I didn't really mean it in a fishing for compliments way, but apparently that's what I got. I got so many lovely comments from you guys, and it was really heartwarming, and I truly did appreciate that. So thank you if you were one of those people. And I did take up your advice. I took a week off podcasting because I mentioned that I get bored and I don't want to keep showing you the same things over and over again. And I know some of you guys said you don't mind, but honestly, I do mind. It also bores me. So I've decided to maybe every now and then just skip an episode so that when I do come back, I actually have things to show you that are exciting and I have made progress, and yeah, that's where we are. So I've taken a week off and I was planning to record on the weekend, and it is now Thursday. It's the middle of my work day, and you know what? My brain is so fried. It's been a ridiculous week. It's been a very busy sort of full-on work day, and I've decided I might as well just take a break, talk about some crafting, and then hopefully go back to work. So I have one finished object this week, which is crochet. If you're not a crocheter, I'll try to keep it brief. I will then move into knitting and keep the rest of the crochet towards the end of the episode. But I have finished my rainbow square blanket. So this is it. This is how big it is. I would say bigger than a baby blanket, also not huge. It's a big giant square. It's a giant granny square to be exact. And the yarn that I use for this is the Puff Flower Crochet yarn, she's a, what do you call it, like a yarn artist in the UK, and she makes these beautiful massive cakes of yarn where she joins, like does all the color planning and color joining and all of that for you. So you receive a cake of yarn and you can just go round and round and round and round, and you don't have to worry about changing colors. You don't have to worry about weaving in ends. They are knotted together, but in a way that left me feeling like they are definitely secure. Obviously your trust in whatever magic knots or whatever they're doing may vary, but I had no problems with it. So I literally just crocheted one entire cake up, and this is how much blanket I got. So I used, the cakes come with different sort of meterage. And I got the biggest one that I could find of this colorway, which is Birthday Cake. So this one was, I think, just over 1,500 meters. So you can see how big that of a blanket it makes. So I think the smaller cakes are more for maybe baby blankets. I did purchase one that's even slightly bigger for another blanket to come. But yeah, I literally crocheted until I lost that yarn chicken this close to finishing another round. And I didn't want to rip back, so what I did is I used a silvery gray from Stylecraft to finish it off, and then I also did a single crochet or double crochet depending on where you are, border around the whole blanket, which I think it just makes it look really pretty. I think it finishes it off really well, and yeah, I'm very excited about this. My husband loves it as well. I think this may come to live in his home office, which otherwise is very sort of officey. And he does love a colorful blanket, so I think this will work perfectly for that. In terms of the crocheting, I just did a simple granny square in the round. It was very fun. I made sure that I changed directions as often as possible to avoid any skewing. So usually I will try to change direction every round. Sometimes that didn't quite work out because the colors would have, like the color progression would have been weird. So sometimes I did more than one round per direction, but I did change it quite a lot. And I think it has come out really, really well. So that is my blanket done, which means I have finished 2 blankets within a reasonably short amount of time. I have started one new one, which I'll show you later, and I have another one planned, but I will talk about that when it happens. So let's have some coffee and talk about some knitting. I have 3 garments on the go, and yeah, that's all I've worked on. To be fair, I've only majorly worked on 2 of them, but let's show you all of them. So first up, we have my very, very colorful linen quill jumper. So this is knitted all out of Pearl Soho linen quill, which I have talked about many times. It's one of my favorite yarns. Although this is the first time I'm using it for a garment, and it is positively glowing. It is very bright, maybe not as bright as on screen, but it is definitely a very bright thing. So I am using different colors of Pearl Soho's linen quill, which is I think a wool, alpaca and linen blend. So these are the 4 colors I am planning on using. I have more if I need to, but I think I've decided I'll only use these 4. And I am just doing a top-down rounded yoke, which the increases will block out. I use the Strange Brew pattern by Tin Can Knits, just because I already had that in my library, and I'd like to use my existing patterns as much as I possibly can. And as you can probably tell, I am marling the yarns. So first I used 5 colors. The first one I didn't show you. I held like a very hot pink with this color. Then I held these 2 together to make this section. You get the idea. I feel like the yellow at the bottom is very bright, and I have a slightly less bright yellow from Pearl Soho linen quill as well, but I sort of wanted to use this one up just because I got this for Christmas from my husband 2 years ago, and I didn't really know what else to do with this color, and I thought with the fading it doesn't really matter, and then I can use my other slightly more beautiful yellow for a different project. I hope it'll work, but I think it will. I think it's all in my head. So as you can tell, I have made a bit of progress. I am not far off starting the ribbing for this jumper, depending on how cropped I want it to be. So I think I've measured that I'm doing 13.5 centimeters per sort of color block, and that should give me a good length of sweater for my personal taste and long torso. So this is where we are with this one. Yeah. And I've been enjoying this a lot. I've been doing a lot of mindless stockinette because life has been stressful, and this has been good for that. And I am holding 2 strands double on 3.75mm needles. So that is one garment. My second garment is my Celeste jumper by Petite Knit. Yes. And I'm using Drops a Daisy for this, which I'm quite enjoying as well. And let's see, where is the front and where is the back? There we go. This is where I am with it. I haven't made tons of progress. I'm not sure where I was when I last showed this to you, but I have split for the sleeves, and I am just, again, on Body Island. I'm just on all the Body Islands at the moment. But with this one, I'm hoping to be off Body Island soon. So yeah, I'm just working stockinette in the round, nothing really to write home about. I think I might even be using the same needles for this. Yes. Also 3.75mm needles with Drops Daisy, and nothing super exciting to tell you about this one. And then lastly, I have been making some progress. Can you tell? I've been trying to work on my projects. I have been making some progress on yet another Body Island. And this one has changed a lot since I last showed it to you. This is my Stripes sweater by Andrea Mowry, aka Drea Renee Knits. And this is going to be my sensible work sweater. So these colors, I'm still not sure if they're my colors, but I think they could be really good for work. This is, I mean, it doesn't have to be a work sweater, but I think this would be a very good work sweater. Like it's very, very thin because I am, instead of using sport weight, I am once again using fingering weight sock yarn. And this is not the right label. This is the right label. This is a 50% wool, 25% silk, and 25% polyamide sock yarn by La Mana in their Merida base. And it's making a very light drapey fabric, which again, I think that would be great for like an officey garment. As you can tell, I'm striping 5 different colorways of this yarn, which I bought in Germany over Christmas. And I do like it. I do think it looks quite nice. So yeah, I'm just trying to work a little bit at a time because this is a fingering weight sweater. So obviously progress is a little bit slower, and I'm using 3.25 millimeter needles on this. But it is coming along quite nicely. I think just the stripes are a good way to keep me going. So I just try to work a stripe here and a stripe there every now and then. And yeah, again, nowhere near being finished, but I am making progress. And the more I make progress on this, the more I like it. In the beginning, I wasn't 100% sure, but now looking at it, I do really like it. So yeah, those have been my knitting projects for the last 10 to 12 days. Also, very excitingly, I have treated myself. And I have treated myself to a electric wool winder. Hear me out. I know some people think it's ridiculous, but I am quite excited by it. I have 2 wool winders, none of which work. I started out with like a little Knit Pro plasticky one, and at some point that wasn't working extremely well anymore, so I got myself a nice wooden, I think the Knit Pro wool winder, which I think lots of people love, and I did like it, but it never worked 100% for me. It came unscrewed a lot, and just before I had my son, so like 3.5 years ago, I made my dad fix it. And it worked for a while, and then I started doing the same thing again, and my dad doesn't live in the same country, and also, I mean, there's only so much I am willing to do. So recently I've been going back to my little crappy plastic one, which is fine, but it wasn't working particularly well to start with, because I'd had that for, 10 years maybe, and my son kept playing with it. So long story short, it broke. So then I had no ball winders that really worked. So I did some research. I actually chatted to some people and found out that apparently the only way to go here in the UK is to get the Hague wool winder. So the Hague is a British company, I believe, and they have a 250 gram and a 125 gram wool winder. So I got the smaller one, and I love it. It took me a while to get used to it, because obviously it's an electric machine. You can't slow it down. It just, either it winds at full speed or it doesn't. And it took me a while to figure out the tensioning, because the smaller version doesn't come with like a tensioning device. But it works really well. And I was always hoping, this is not why I bought it, but I was thinking if I had an electric ball winder, what I could do is I could wind up all of my crochet blanket yarn, because all of the, this is Yarn Smith's Create and Stylecraft, they all come in these big balls, and whatever I do, they always fall apart for me. If I do a center pull, they'll turn into a tangle. If I pull from the outside, they'll always turn into a tangle, and I hate it. But I always said I'm not willing to wind all of these by hand, but I was wondering, would the wool winder do it? And it turns out it did. The electric wool winder, it didn't like it, let's be honest. It wasn't happy with it. But I managed to cake all of my blanket yarn for this blanket, which I think was like 12 skeins, throughout like a 45-minute lunch meeting while working. So that's definitely made it worth my while. I'm very excited. I'm not sponsored, by the way. I am just telling you what makes me excited, and that is one of those things. And this leads me nicely into my crochet, because I've been winding all of my yarn, which was good because it also made me sort through all of my stash. And I have lots of ideas, and I feel like every now and then I just need to reorganize my stash so I know what I have, and it felt really good. And I also wound up a fair amount of sweater quantities, not all of them, but the ones that I knew I was going to knit likely quite soon, and just to have yarn ready to go. But like I said, I also wound up my blanket yarn, and this is my first time using Yarnsmith's Create DK, which I think is quite new. It's sort of their alternative, or Wool Warehouse's alternative to Starcraft Special DK. And I will say, I think I like this better than the Starcraft. I think this may be more my jam. I know different people have different feelings on like the Attic 24 forums and so on, but I really like this yarn. I haven't used it long enough to tell you how it's going to feel after, I don't know, half a year, but I know that I don't love the Starcraft. Like, I do really like it. I think it's a good yarn, but it's not my favorite. And I have been crocheting with this. It's a bit less shiny, it's a bit more matte, and I really like it. So do you want to see my newest crochet obsession? Look at this! How pretty is this? This is what I've been doing. This is why I've not made much knitting progress. Well, I have, but not considering it's been 10 days. I have been working on this, and it's looking a bit crinkled, but I think that's just because A, it hasn't been blocked, and B, I keep shoving it into a basket of yarn. I have been obsessed with sunburst granny squares. So these are called sunburst granny squares. If you're a crocheter, you know, I think they've been around for a long time. And I am so excited by them. I hadn't really decided what to do with this blanket quantity of yarn. I just have all these contrast colors, and I have 3 balls, I think, of this sort of beigey shade, which is warm taupe. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna try these sunburst squares and see how I like them. And then I got obsessed and I couldn't stop. So I made all of these, and my plan was to make really random sort of color selections. But I did realize I really enjoy sort of joining them as I go, rather than crocheting, I don't know, 16 squares and then joining them all at once. And then even though I didn't want to manage colors, I sort of started, like I had to manage colors because I kept putting the same colors next to each other. There were some colors that I gravitated more towards. So I really enjoyed it, but at the same time, I feel like this became it was like a lot of effort. Because what I like about crocheting is the mindlessness of it. I do really enjoy just crocheting along. That's why I like the giant granny squares, or all the like Attic 24 striped blankets, because once you get into pattern, you can just go and go and go and go. And clearly, with 4 color changes per square, plus the sort of surrounding color, there's a lot going on. I was crocheting in all the ends as I went, so that was good. But it did get a little bit fiddly. So I think while I enjoy the technique of making these sunburst squares, I don't necessarily enjoy changing colors quite so often. So what I've done is, as you can tell, I've made a square of 4x4 sunburst. And now I am just going to make like a giant granny square panel around it. And I think it'll be really pretty. So I'll have sort of like the scrappy look around it. I can do, you know, rounds and rounds and rounds of crochet. But I also have this beautiful flower motif in the middle. I think it'll be quite pretty. And I'm also planning another blanket with a very similar sort of flower crochet stitch, which I won't tease today, but I'll tell you about it soon, because I'm sure I'm going to be starting it soon. But yeah, so this is what I've been doing, and this has taken up more time than I'd like to admit. I used a couple of different patterns for the sunburst squares. So if you go into Google, there's tons of different ones. And I sort of went between a couple of different patterns until I found one that I really liked. And then I also sort of adjusted it, because the last round in all of the patterns that I could find had a chain stitch between these stitches that basically turn the circle into a square, and I didn't like it. So I also improvised, but I think it worked out really well. And as you can tell, most of the ends have been snipped off. There are some, they have been woven in, I just need to snip them. So there's no massive amounts of ends needing to be woven in towards the end. So yeah, that's been my crochet project. And I just love these colors. I love these so much. And again, so far I really like the Yarn Smith Create yarn. I feel like I might be coming back to this yarn in the future if it continues to work up like it has so far. So yeah, that's all that I've been working on. It's been 20 minutes since I started recording, which is quite a lot. What I'm wearing, the same as last week. I've been living in my pink lentil. I love it so much. I keep talking about it. In fact, I actually have, when I got my new electric wool binder, I have wound up quite a few quantities of mohair so that they're ready to go. And as soon as one of my many sweaters is nearing being finished, I'll be casting on lentils. I want all the lentils for spring. They make me feel springy and colorful, and I don't know, there's just something about it. It fits well, it fits my style, it works with like my requirements. So there are more lentils in the future. And then the other day I had a really weird brainwave, because with my linen quill sweater, I know a lot of people on Instagram really liked it. The only person who hates it is Kai. He thinks like the colors are beautiful on their own, and what I've done with it is just ugly, which is fine. He's allowed to think that. I don't agree, but I think it got into my head. And then, but I was like, I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do with all of my linen quill. I have some more, and I just couldn't make my mind up, so I decided to just work with it. And then the other day, I saw someone post a Vertices Unite shawl by Stephen West, and I was like, oh dang, I should have made a Vertices Unite with this. And yes, I did seriously consider ripping out my, 60-70% finished sweater to make a Vertices Unite, because I think it would be amazing. And I would love to have a Vertices Unite shawl out of linen quill. Remember last week I talked about wanting a go-to stitch wrap that isn't a half and half wrap? I think Vertices Unite could be that. And I have made one in the past, so I have the pattern. I don't have to buy it again. I just made a poor yarn choice when I made it last time, which was, again, almost 4 years ago. So I was I decided not to rip out my sweater, and I was very tempted to go and order more linen quill, because I have some more in my stash, but it really didn't work with the colors. I also went through my entire stash to see if I had other yarn that would work for one, and nothing worked. So I very much want to order more of this yarn, but I have been sensible for now, and I ordered what is definitely a budget version for this shawl. I've ordered some yarn. I've ordered some Isaiah Highland wool, which I've used before, and it comes in 50-gram skeins, and I think that should be enough for what I want with my gauge and size and whatever. So instead of buying a whole, 5 skein quantity of linen quill, instead of ripping out my sweater, I think I spent about £30 to get 100% wool yarn that would also hopefully work for the exact same purpose. So as soon as that gets here, I think I'll be casting on my linen quill, not my linen quill, my Isaiah Vertices Unite shawl by Stephen West, and I'm very excited about it. So yeah, that is in the pipeline. If you're wondering what happened to my marled shawl that I was knitting over Christmas, that I was using my Advent cowl leftovers for, I have bound that off and gifted it to my son. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I didn't like the shape. I didn't like the colors. It took me a while to realize, but then, yeah, it wasn't working, and I wasn't willing to invest more time, put more yarn in it. I have bound it off. My son likes it because it's fluffy and like a rainbow. So he's happy, he's worn it a couple of times, and honestly, I feel much lighter not having that on my needles anymore. So yeah, those are my knitting plans, my crochet plans, what I've been doing, what I've been thinking about. Before I forget, I do have to say a very special happy birthday to Rachel, whose husband reached out and reminded me that it's her birthday. I think it was last Monday, the 19th. So happy birthday. I'm so glad I didn't forget that. Otherwise, yeah, house news. We've had torrential rain. Our hallway has not been leaking, which is great, except this morning I walked into our dining room, which is our conservatory, and there was a puddle on our... oh my god, this is so ridiculous. There was a puddle on our dining table. Not a big puddle, but yeah, it is leaking. But it's not too bad. It's been literally raining all day and it hasn't leaked again. So I'm thinking it must be very, very subtle. So fingers crossed. We will fix that one as well. But yeah, that's all I'll say. Anyways, my husband's now interrupting and I have to go back to work. But I really hope you enjoyed this little rundown of all of my knitting and crochet and crafting and yarn winding adventures. Yeah, thank you so much for spending some time with me. I hope you worked on some projects while listening, if you could. Let me know what you are dreaming about knitting, what you're thinking about crafting. I'm always interested to hear that. And thanks again for, just being lovely viewers of this podcast. So until I see you again, I hope you all stay safe and healthy and have some lovely yarn to play with. Thanks for watching. Happy knitting. See you very soon. Bye.